What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having an amazing day. A better day than OP in our first story, I really do hope, because he gets scammed by his own friend for a Nintendo Wii he's trying to sell. How trying to sell a Wii to a friend ended up with me losing money and burnt bridges. So, I've been trying to leave this whole mess behind, and I figured ranting about it on the web could help. Now, I know there were probably many things that I did wrong or could have handled better, so I'll accept any criticism wholeheartedly. Get comfortable, guys. This is a long one.
That's what she said.
For some backstory, I've been friends with this guy, let's call him Sid, for what would have been 7 years if the following events didn't happen. Since I saw him as such, we did many activities together, many hangouts and sleepovers. In my house, he hardly ever invited me to his, and even him staying for a week after his dad kicked him and his mum out of the house. Needless to say, we were close at the time, which is why I had such a hard time putting my foot down and even cutting ties with him throughout all of this. Prior to this mess, I've been thinking of selling my Wii console, along with 2 controllers and 30 plus games, for a while, but I used to always set it aside or just forget about it. Around July of last year, because of the virus, I decided I could use the money, so I started the process of actually selling my Wii. I researched a bit to set a price, 8,000 to 9,000 Argentinian pesos, so roughly 85 to 95 US dollars. I'd seen similar bundles nearing those prices online. Note, I know that some numbers in the story may seem messed up, but so is our economy, so please just roll with it, oh my god. Anyway, on to the story. Sid had already shown interest for the Wii, but because I wanted to sell it for good money and not take it out of a friend's hands, I, for whatever reason, told him that I would most likely look for a buyer on the internet. After much insisting on his part, I decided to sell it to him. Discounted, of course, because we were friends at the time. Instead of going for the original 8,000 pesos, I lowered it to 6,500, so around $70. He actually tried to talk me into taking 6,000, but I took it as a joke and brushed it off, telling him the price was firm. Even when I'd made it clear how much it was, he had a second problem. He said his girlfriend didn't like the idea of him spending that much. Yes, I now know that sounds dumb, as always, hindsight is 2020. For reference, he didn't live with said girlfriend just yet, and they'd been dating for about a year. Not much of a reason to have a say on how he spent his money. Whatever, he wanted to cut me a deal. He'd at first pay me 1,500 pesos for the Wii, and then 500 each month, so that would be $16 up front and then $5 monthly, until the full price was paid off. I decided to just take it. Like I said, I needed the money. The second problem was after we made the transaction. Since I lost the original box for the Wii, I decided to put the console, the accessories, and the games inside a set of 3 boxes, as neatly as I could. I also, of course, turned on the Wii to see if it still worked, and ran all of the games through it the night before. I did my best to make sure everything was in condition, which it was. The only exception was the charger, whose cable had a bit of plastic recoil from the transformer, so its wires were visible. Now, I had offered to fix this, but Sid said he'd handle it. Well, after a while, he came to pick it up. Sid then sent me a message complaining that the charger's cable had broken. The messages had an accusatory tone, as if it were my fault, and not because he took the console without much care. That is the opposite of what I warned him to do when he took it, by the way. However, reluctantly, I agreed to pay half of what it would cost to fix it. Other than that, things seemed to be going well. I took the 1,500, we split the cost of the fix, which is 500 pesos each. I took note of how much Sid owed me after this so I wouldn't forget, and I waited. And I waited, and I waited for 6 to 7 months. In said time, I ended up losing my job and getting a gig that doesn't pay as much. I told Sid many times to please either give me at least part of what he owed me or tell me when he could do it, because I was having a bit of a hard time. What was he doing in the meantime, you ask? Well, he was going out with friends, including but not limited to our friend group, buying gifts for his girlfriend and taking her on dates, and he freaking bought an apartment. Yeah, you heard me right, guys. He hadn't finished paying me back before settling a deal to move into an apartment, including the obvious deposits, rent, and utilities, which he actually used as an argument to justify why he didn't have money. Needless to say, I got annoyed more and more as we approached February, with me not receiving another cent from Sid. Alright, so at this point, Sid is saying that he's not able to pay back $5 a month, but he is able to buy an apartment. Okay, very interesting, Sid. Finally, during a phone call, he mentioned that he could finally give me the $2,000 that he owed me. The thing is, if you kept up with the math, he actually still owed me $4,500. So not only did he keep me waiting for half a year, but he tried to lowball me for a second time. I cut that conversation short, hoping I'd misunderstood something. But no. I later reminded him to please let me know when he could hand me the 4,500 pesos he'd yet to pay me. He started arguing that it was 2,000 because he'd given me the 1,500, then 2,000 out of the total of 6,000, which I hadn't even agreed to. I tried to argue that 6,500, which was the original price, minus 500 for the charger fix, minus 1,500, what he gave me, equaled the remaining 4,500. But no, he was convinced he'd actually paid me more, even though he hadn't. After a short back and forth, he basically texted me that he was sick of arguing and to go to his house the next day to get the Wii and give back his 1,500 pesos, which he at first said was more. The thing is, I couldn't gather the money unless I managed to sell the console again. So I said that I'd give him the money as soon as I could get it. He either didn't acknowledge that statement or chose to ignore it and just said that he'd give back the console and to hand back the money. I was so frustrated that my mum noticed something was wrong and asked me what happened. After I told her, she sat me down and helped me realize that Sid was an exploiter. I'd been there for him more times than I could count, done so many favors, and here he was, screwing me over. She was pretty mad about it too, and asked me if I wanted her to come with me for support the next day, but I said that wasn't necessary. I still had her drive me there because I ended up running late to the time Sid had set for me to come round. Now, here is where I very likely messed up. I went the next day and took the console back, but I didn't have the money. I'll admit that this was because I obviously couldn't get it on such short notice, but also because I felt it was hypocritical of him to keep me waiting for my money for 6 to 7 months, yet expect me to get it at the drop of a hat. Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, guys, that is completely fair enough. Once I got to his place, Sid nonchalantly gave me the console in a suspiciously small bag. I didn't pay much attention to that detail, since I was tired of this whole ordeal and wanted to get it over with. He demanded the money and got offended when I said I didn't have it. Being almost out of patience, I answered, "Look, you've kept me waiting for 6 months for this. Give me at least a couple of days." Then I got in the car and left. Now, while in the car, I decided to actually check the bag Sid had given me more thoroughly. That's when I noticed it. The 30 plus games that I'd given Sid, all inside of their boxes, paper envelopes I brought them in, were now 10 CDs tucked into a package. I called Sid, fuming, and asked him where the missing games went. He had sold them each for 10 pesos, not even a tenth of their actual worth, to pay for his half of the cost to fix the charger without telling me. I just blew up and told him that selling the Wii would be much harder now, then demanded he got the games back. His only answer was, "Give me the 1,500 pesos and I'll get you the games." Now, all of this was on speakerphone, since I had my phone in one hand and the bag with the Wii in the other. So after hearing this, my mum had also had enough. She grabbed the phone out of my hand and tore into him as well. I ended up blocking his contact after I saw a text of his that read, "If I give you something, you're supposed to give me the money," which he'd sent before the call. I was just tired of this train wreck of a deal and wanted to talk it out after taking some time to clear my head. The thing is, Sid didn't give me any time. He went on the group chat we had with our friends to throw me under the bus, claim how much of an idiot and a scammer I was, and then kick me out of the group. They didn't even know what was going on, so my friends got quite a surprise. To not make a long story longer, someone else put me back in the chat. We discussed it, and, well, some harsh language was thrown around. Sid defended himself, saying he didn't pay me back because he had to fix his apartment, and that I should be more sympathetic. The thing is, he decided to get the apartment on his own. I didn't see how I was to be held liable because he got a place he couldn't afford. He also didn't tell me any of this. He kept me in the dark, waiting for a payment that I never got. In the end, I was willing to negotiate to get the games back, in exchange of giving Sid the 1,500 pesos. He, however, wanted to cut all ties, because there is no friendship here. He didn't want the money back, nor have anything else to do with me. And honestly, I just accepted this. Not just because of the Wii issue, but this whole thing helped me look back on more trashy attitudes he'd had, and overall him being a negative person. For instance, he once told me I had too high of a standard for going for girls I found pretty. Me being me. And now I have a Wii with over half of the games missing, which, as I later realized, he had factory reset. Something to note, the Wii was chipped, which means it had a program installed to run games that are not exactly original, but cheaper. This is common practice where I live, and the games usually work fine. Now, because of the reset, said program was gone, which means the games are basically useless. The cost to set it back up is currently 2,800 pesos, 1,300 more than Sid originally gave me. I lost money and games trying to sell this guy my console. As for Sid, I hadn't much news from him since I cut contact. Last I heard, he actually had a fight with another friend from our circle and left 2 group chats we were both involved in. So, that's the story of how a failed attempt of selling a console cost me a 7-ish-year-old friendship and made me decide I'll never sell something to a friend again. I'll admit, I was sad because of the outcome at first, but life goes on. I'll just try again when I get the Wii back in selling condition, then move on with my life. If you've listened to this whole story all the way to the end, let me tell you that you're a legend, and I hope this story entertained you as much as it frustrated me. The main takeaway for me, guys, in this story is that OP, I'm sorry to say, but the thing that you had with Sid, it wasn't real friendship. Yes, you might have been friends for years, 7 years, but it was such a one-way friendship that it really wasn't that, mutually beneficial at all, was it? He was just using you, you were having to deal with all his rubbish, and he was just pretty much just taking advantage of you existing whilst you were just, lying down and letting him kind of walk over you like a mat. Not saying that's your fault at all, but maybe you should have realized earlier. But even though you didn't, this was a good event, I reckon, on the whole, to make you realize that this guy is not someone you want to be spending time with. He's not a friend. He's not someone you can trust. And ultimately, he's someone that's going to try and scam you, and pretty much did. I've got to say though, OP sounds like, you'd love to be mates with him, wouldn't you? He's so caring, he's so kind, he gives you 6 to 7 months to repay you. What a nice guy. And to be let down by someone like this, I feel bad that, people like OP, they're very few, they're few and far between. They're such rare people, so innocent, so kind, so generous. And to get walked over by people like Sid, when we should really just be protecting them and nourishing them as people, is such a shame to see. But yeah, OP, if it's any consolation, I'd like to be friends with you. If you want a new friend, mate, I'm not desperate or anything. Just, you sound like a good guy. All right, let's leave it there. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this one. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you did and you want more stories from me right away, you can check out the playlist on screen of all my Entitled Parents videos. If you are new to the channel as well, do hit the subscribe button, and only elite members watching right now will turn the notification bell on. If you do that and join the notification gang and then comment one of the earliest comments on my newest uploads every single day, I always go through and heart them, reply to a few. So yeah, do that and you'll be in with a chance of getting a nice reply from me, and I'll love you forever. See you all tomorrow.